Welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, a podcast from Aberdeen discussing the latest trends to keep you and your business at the top of your class. And now, here's your host, Aberdeen's CMO in residence, Matthew Grant.
Hello, and welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, the podcast that focuses on how organizations just like yours are using data to make their businesses more intelligent. I'm your host, Matthew Grant, CMO in residence here at Aberdeen. This week, we're speaking with Ben Harris, CEO at Decibel Insight, a company whose digital experience intelligence platform is designed specifically to help companies measure, benchmark, and improve customer experiences. I was curious to learn more about measuring and improving the digital experience, so we invited Ben to the show. Let's dive in. Hey, Ben, welcome to the Intelligent Business Show.
Hi, pleased to be here.
I'm really glad you could join us. So let's just start right at the top. Decibel Insight, you guys describe yourselves as a digital experience intelligence platform. What does that mean?
Okay. Well, Decibel is a marketing technology, and it's designed to automatically identify how customers experience websites and apps so that companies can understand those experiences so they can improve them.
All right, perfect. So I think, UX, for example, has been on the rise for a long time now. Is this, strictly speaking, just a user experience thing? Is that how you guys think about it?
No, I think UX is a sort of subset of it. So we kind of see customer experience in two parts. We see the first part being around designing an experience the way the customer would like it. I think in the past, businesses have tended to do the way that they think it should be done, and now it's all about understanding, how might it work best for a customer. But the second part is actually those experiences are inevitably do go wrong at some stage, and so customer experience is about designing it for the customer, but also about responding to it in the right way when it goes wrong, to bring a customer back into that buying cycle and keep them as a loyal customer. So when we think about user experience to us is about improving elements of in this case, a website or an app, to try and get someone over the line. It's about optimizing elements to persuade someone to do something. And you can do that with a coupon offer. I mean, you don't have to necessarily just change design. You can do it in multiple ways. But that's all about kind of improving CAC, the cost of acquisition. If you spend all that money on getting a customer to your website and they don't buy something, that's a heavy cost to bear. And user experience is about obviously helping with elements of that to try and get someone over the line on that day. But we see customer experience more around customer lifetime value. So this is about holistically looking at a website or an app from end to end to understand where are those issues on the website, where is friction being caused, or where is something working really well. But to understand the experience in a way that you can improve it to create really loyal customers to come back again and again. So it's really the difference between unit economics. It's about improving LTV as opposed to improving CAC.
Okay.
A mixture of both.
All right. So, and that makes sense, I think, especially when you talk about tying this all together, and then also when you talk about something that really struck out to me about Decibel Insight. It's specifically in our conversations, prior to the call today, you said that companies tend to track and measure clicks on their site, but you say Decibel Insight captures the data between the clicks. So could you talk a little bit about what is the data that people are missing, this data between the clicks, and how exactly you guys go about capturing that?
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe let me take it back a bit.
All right.
In the real world, if you went into a store, a good shopper system is going to keep a respectful distance between them and you, but they're going to be watching and looking for the signals that you give out through your body language that now's the moment that they need you, that you need help. And that's the moment they should go and help you. But it's amazing that online you're basically left to your own devices. Companies are basically flying in the dark with no understanding of what's really happening. So if there is an issue or for whatever reason your experience goes off track, you're left completely helpless and normally to be quite frustrated and to go elsewhere. And that's kind of the problem and we think that that's a result of companies only having click data. So traditional analytics has been sort of core to most businesses in the world. I think Google Analytics has 90% penetration, and businesses are just used to having the data that they provide. And what that does is look at clicks. It looks at what people end up interacting with. What it doesn't do is look at what happens in between those clicks. And to us, that's the bit where you learn about how someone behaves and why they behave that way and how they feel about that interaction. It's the context of that experience. It's the fact that a strange validation error came up on a form and you weren't quite sure what to do with it. It's the fact you couldn't see something, or the fact you had to click it multiple times to make it work, or it didn't work. That's the stuff you miss if you're only tracking what actually happens as opposed to all the other type of interactions. And that's the bit that we're looking to fill. And we call that data experience data. So as opposed to click data, what we are collecting and enriching and providing to companies for business intelligence is experience data.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, for example, it was my understanding that this data between the clicks you capture are things like mouse movements and hovers and things like that. Are there other things that are good? I mean, among those, are there other things that actually you feel like are good indicators of what the actual digital experience of the visitor is?
Yeah. So I missed that important part. So we collect billions of user sessions from every client of ours, every website and app, looking at the way that someone moves around, the way that they move their mouse, the way they touch, the speed and velocity of it. My analogy to this is all around, like, I guess if you wouldn't go to the back of a Target store to buy your morning coffee. You know, it's a big store. It takes time to get there. It's inconvenient. It's just not something you would do because it's too much work. So if you look in the online arena, if it takes you a mile of mouse movement to make a transaction on one site versus half a mile on another site doing the same transaction, inherently the site that took a mile of movement is just a worse experience. So we're looking at data points like that and the velocity that someone moves a mouse and the amount of hesitation, the speed in which they scroll, but the number of times they go up and down, and all these different elements give us this real understanding of what's really happening for the user. So, in the past, you would have to use like a survey to try and establish how the customer felt. So, you've got your click data, which is your quantitative data, but you'd have to ask someone for the qualitative data. What do you think? And that tends to be focused around a Net Promoter Score, which is common to, well, in fact, it's used by 70% of enterprise businesses. Yep. And that question is, as many people know, how likely are you to refer this brand to a friend or colleague? And if you've just had a really sort of frustrating or difficult experience, it doesn't mean you've completely broken ties with the brand, but you're still kind of frustrated and you still kind of want to tell them. But this question that you're asked doesn't really correlate with that experience. So you can get some really skewed results in respect to digital. Your Net Promoter Score has a place in business, but when it comes to understanding someone's individual experience on a website, to complement your quantitative data, it actually becomes very tricky to do.
Right. And I imagine, too, when you ask people about their experience on the website, they might not even always be able to articulate what they found particularly frustrating about it. But with your technology, you can actually look back to kind of tie together a kind of subjective experience, frustration or confusion, to actual behavioral behaviors that you can actually track and quantify on the site.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people filling in surveys have to have a very polarized view. They normally either really love or really hate the brand, and that tends to give them enough energy to complete a survey. But yeah, what we're trying to do is understand the experience for everybody all the time without asking them, because through mouse movements and screen movement through an app, we can understand a lot about how someone feels about that interaction, and that's enabling us to be able to react in scale. When I go back to what I was talking about, the two parts of customer experience, if the second part is all around responding when something goes wrong, for us, you need to be able to be in a position to understand what's happening as it happens and then react to it. And to give you another example, I went to go and buy something on a website the other day, trying to buy some trainers, and actually took me months to get round to going to do it. I knew I needed some new trainers, and I got pretty excited when I found the ones that I wanted. But when I tried to put it in my basket, I couldn't get it in. And that filled me with complete panic that finally, having found them after months, I wasn't going to be able to buy them. And that's the kind of experience that, to me, should have been understood by the website. In this day and age, shouldn't that website should have known that I had that problem? And shouldn't the reaction have been, we've seen you've had a problem, click here and we'll help you complete your order, or, here's a coupon, we'll let you know when the problem's fixed and we'll invite you back to spend it. But some kind of communication to react in real time to what's happening. And if you have survey data, it's really helpful for finding problems, but it's not helpful for responding to your customers and to try and keep them in their buying cycle. And that's the difference.
Right. No, so first of all, I think just for our North American listeners, or at least Americans, by trainers, you mean like sneakers or what we sometimes call tennis shoes.
I do indeed.
Okay, nice. But also I loved what you just said about the website should understand, because going back to your metaphor before of the shop assistant, it sounds like what Decibel Insight is allowing companies to do is to make their sites more intelligent, in a sense, make their sites more attentive, and as you say, responsive to what's the frustrations that are happening. Because, I know something about the UX world and UX testing and all these other things, but even in eye tracking studies and stuff like that people can do on existing websites, to me, I feel like, based on what you're saying, those tend to have more of a diagnostic value. So you diagnose a problem, then you go back, and it's part of an iterative design and improvement process. But what you're talking about is trying to use this like in-the-moment insight to actually have the website respond appropriately in the moment, not, this is a problem we recognize, and the next version of our site it'll be fixed.
Yeah, I think so. To me, eye tracking and user testing have their place. And normally that is when you're designing a new part of your site or a new website altogether, and you want to get some feedback from real users to give you a different perspective on how you look at it. And that has a real, genuine use. But what we're doing is looking at scale across all customers all the time to understand what's happening, to understand what's going right and what's not going right, and to do two things. One, to enable the company to fix that problem, and B, to be able to react when there's a problem. And by the way, we should probably say that this is all steeped in the fact that the US businesses alone last year lost $76 billion from poor experiences, and all that lost profit and that reputational risk and all the general increased competition is putting this matter firmly on the C-suite agenda, because you just can't avoid it now. And for us, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide the intelligence so that companies can actually now find and fix these problems.
So could you talk a little bit about the fixes? Like, what are some of the things that companies have done or could do with the insights that Decibel Insight provides them?
So we have a scoring mechanism and to understand experience. So to look at scale and do it in real time, you have to obviously apply some data science and machine learning to this. And we've identified 6 key different types of behavioral types which we score in order to give us our overall ranking. The first is around navigation, and a bad experience could be someone that is trying to find, it could be a contact information and ends up in this continual cycle of coming back to the same place because they can't get to the information they want or they can't find it. And we see that kind of behavior where you just end up going in a loop. And we've been there again and again doing the same thing. And again, you feel frustrated because you can't find the information you want and no one's there to help you.
Right.
And another type is technical errors. There are many problems on sites, and it may be an error. It may be the way that the error is described. Very often it's a technical person building the site that puts the error message in. not thinking really from the customer's perspective on them reading it and knowing what to do with it. And that can cause a whole bunch of bad experiences. Even the speed of a site, of course, can cause difficulty and has a huge effect on conversion. The bad experience can be a form, and a form is the business end of any experience, and there can be numerous difficulties in just illogical ways of working, giving information you don't really need to be giving that they have already, and there aren't many forms that you go through and think, "Oh, that was a great experience."
True.
And then it's kind of we also look at the level of engagement, which is basically, are they reading or not? And so a bad experience is one where we're seeing people scroll through at an incredible pace and going up and down and moving around and clearly not engaging properly with the content, as opposed to someone actually moving their mouse along words and going at a pace that they're clearly reading. And frustrations where people happen to click things multiple times and they're moving around really erratically and clearly getting frustrated with the experience. And the sixth type that we see is around confusion, and we call that kind of behaviour a bird's nest, where someone's kind of basically drawing a bird's nest because they're going up and down and left and right and side to side. So that kind of creates these bad experiences. So for us, it's about creating these really smooth end-to-end journeys that create inspiration, where sites should work, where forms are clean and intuitive and obvious, where the content is visible so you can engage with it, where there's multiple different types of content that guide you through, breaking it up with different things, keep it interesting, and then that's all for us generates a much better experience and ultimately a loyal customer.
Yeah, I was wondering on the form front, because I know kind of form analysis is one of the things that you all do. Have you, from now capturing all these, millions and billions of experiences or just actions on websites, have you guys come up with any sort of prescriptive insights about how companies should be thinking about their forms?
Well, I think hopefully one day forms would be replaced with voice or something, because of course forms are difficult. But the simple forms, the ones where the fields are big enough and where there's no distraction around them, that follow a logical series of steps, only asking for the information they absolutely need at that moment, where the error message when they appear are understandable, or where in advance it explains to you what you need to do in that field. Those obvious ways of going through are the ones that are most effective in generating the best response.
Right. I think it's something that one of our other guests had spoken about as well. It's like there's so much data out there, and you can even pre-populate fields or do things that, I like what you're saying, only capture the information you absolutely need. The other thing is by pre-populating fields, he was arguing it helps personalize the form. And again, it gives the user the sense that, they already know me or they know enough about me and they're not making me just jump through hoops to supply information they could get elsewhere.
Yeah, it's like calling up a call center, having to put in your account number to get through, and then them asking your account number when you get through. It's like, well, I just did it. So
right.
It's people to know. I think there's not been enough innovation around forms. I think that people worry more about the technology behind it and don't start from the customer's perspective and say, right, what would be the best experience here? And you know that because when you do have a good experience on a form, you recognize it. It's you think, wow, that really was easy. Why can't all forms be that easy? So it is possible.
Yeah, I like even that you say that. It's something that I feel like, right, with the form especially, is that so often companies they're focused on all the information they want to get so that they can essentially use the form as a type of qualification device. And they really don't think about, this experience. In fact, I believe that goes to almost anything that marketing does. We, as marketers, we rarely are thinking about the user experience of what's it like to receive this unsolicited email, what's it like to have to deal with this pop-up when I get on a site, or what's it like to have to fill out a form when I feel like even from knowing the domain I'm coming from and things like that, which is totally possible on websites now, that you're making me actually give you information you could have gotten on your own.
I think that's it. People are tuned in now. They know that with these disruptive businesses out there, that things can be done in a completely different way. It doesn't have to follow the old guard, and so they care about it now. And Gartner says that by 2022, that experience will actually overtake price as a key driver for customers. And actually, there's already reports saying that customers are prepared to pay more for a better experience.
Yep.
So it really does matter now, and it's not something that can be avoided.
Right.
It was interesting. The other day you were talking about the experience itself, and actually a good experience maybe should be something which should be ignored. When it's a good experience, you wouldn't notice it. But actually, I think when it comes back to things like forms, it has to be inspirational as well. Experiences have to be inspirational. I think people do. They place value on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And it's something that also, since you mentioned, like people have Uber and all these other things, I think one of the things we're seeing in the B2B world, which is where we tend to play, that the B2B world lags behind the B2C world in a lot of these experiential dimensions. And that a lot of B2B marketers, they don't realize or haven't really thought about how much the expectations of their buyers are being set by their experiences in the consumer world, or just their daily experience, like working with websites. And so I think there's a lot of pressure right now on B2B companies that rely so heavily on form fills and all these other things to kind of do their thing, that they're actually doing things that customers are seeing less and less in their daily lives, and therefore it's all the more jarring when they come to a website and have to fill out something lengthy or illogical, as you said, just to get a demo or talk to a sales rep.
Yeah, I agree.
So there was another question I had here. Oh yeah, so I'm wondering. So we talked about, it's clear. I mean, I feel like just on a just a logical kind of common sense level. Obviously, you don't want to be confusing your site visitors. You don't want to be frustrating site visitors and things like that. So I think intuitively people know, oh yeah, we should be probably making better experiences on our website. I think if a company's continuing to actually get revenue and things like that, it's easy to kind of ignore those problems and just treat them as if, we're going to lose some along the way, but we're still getting enough so it doesn't matter. It's like the way people approach email marketing, I feel like. I can send out 20,000 emails and maybe I'm going to annoy a few thousand people, but if I get the conversions I want, well, that's just the cost of doing business. So I'm just curious how you guys talk about the real business benefits of taking the digital experience seriously and trying to make your site more attentive, intelligent, and responsive by capturing data and responding to it in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think in the past, companies have been a bit complacent because if the business model works, then, you don't need to work too hard to try and keep it. So in the past, money's tended to have focused on acquisition, spending money to bring customers to the website apps in the first place. But that is increasing in cost for two reasons. Number one, it's becoming more competitive, but also because of these experience issues. Because as it's like I always see it as like a bath with holes in it. And if you're bringing people to the website and it's just all leaking out, it becomes incredibly expensive. You're always putting more stuff back in the top to try and keep it filled. And this is about people are now focusing. They're realizing this because it's too competitive out there with increasing acquisition and more competition. If they can just seal some of those holes, wow, they can keep a lot more customers. They can have them coming back again and have them spending money. Once you've paid for a customer in the first place, they're free. Every time they come back, they're just more revenue and they're just more profit because you've already acquired them. And so this is something which can hugely affect the business model. Again, it comes back to LTV to CAC, a customer lifetime value to the cost of acquisition. And actually, I think one of the most exciting things about customer experience or digital experience is that the people at the coalface can actually have a huge impact on the unit economics of a business. I mean, there's not many kind of industries where that's possible. Normally it's from the top making decisions that will ultimately help generate the success of the business. But actually in digital, you can make decisions that have a huge impact on retaining customers that come to the website and keeping them coming back again. And I think that's what businesses are now realizing, and that's why there's this change in focus. Let's say with the amount of budgets now being focused in this area.
Right. And there was one other thing that I wanted to ask about. Oh, yes. So when you're talking about like at the coalface and what's happening on the site, I was just curious about, there seems to be a very intense and aggressive rise in chatbots and chat technology, and going on sites, there's always a little digital helper, asking, hey, can I help you find something or whatnot. First of all, I'm assuming that Decibel Insight sort of interacts with these kind of chatbots, but I'm also curious about, are you finding that kind of thing, whether it's chatbot or live chat, actually does have a positive impact on the digital experience as you guys are tracking it?
I think so. So one of the cornerstones of Decibel's digital experience platform is our digital experience score. So this is the first ever comprehensive measure of customers' experiences on websites and apps. So it basically takes this experience data and it effectively quantifies it to give you a number between 0 and 10 of the experience someone's having. Now, by us feeding that kind of data into something like a chat box, you can pop up and start engaging a customer at the point that something might be going wrong. So this comes back to that story that I had of having that experience of buying some sneakers and not being able to complete that transaction. And if at that point someone had popped up a way of communicating with a company directly, then I might have carried on buying those sneakers, because not only now, I bought them somewhere else, but they've lost me that website. I won't be back again. And so it's not just one pair of trainers they've lost, it's several, because I've been there and bought them before from there. So this is a serious cost. But with something like a chatbot, the key thing for me is engagement from the company. Assuming that they were able to recognize that there was a problem through us feeding a score through and say that there's a problem here, that's kind of, for me, recognizing the issue. And I would have been, as a customer, pretty satisfied with that. Hopefully that chatbot would have been able to communicate in the right way to help them resolve the problem. And if not, of course, that's another potential area of frustration. But I think the fact is, if you can find a way of scale to engage with customers, I think that definitely goes somewhere towards improving that digital experience.
Right. All right. Well, that does it for our conversation today. It sounds like Decibel Insight is doing something that's totally necessary in the business world today, but also doing it in a really unique way, if you don't mind me saying so. So I wanted to thank you for joining us on the show, Ben.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed our chat.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next week when we'll be talking to Razat Gaurav, CEO of LlamaSoft, and he'll be talking about intelligence in the supply chain. Talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find this show on iTunes and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Aberdeen_show. And if you want to know what's going on in your market space, be sure to check out Aberdeen.com.